Okay, it's 9:30 in the morning when I'm recording this. Um, but I wanted to take a day to kind of recover from Peg 64 and kind of gather my thoughts on it before I made a video about it. I could have made it as soon as I beat it, but I was very hyped up at the time. I was very exhausted at the time. I had a lot of frustrations at the time. So I took a night, I cooled off, I got myself ready for this, and now I'm gonna record this. One take, I'm not gonna script this out, so this is just genuine opinions. I do have bullet points to kind of keep me on track, but I want to talk about everything related to part 2 of Pig 64. I really enjoyed the original part 1. I went into this with pretty high hopes, and I'm just gonna say now, those hopes were definitely satisfied. I'm just gonna say that now. I walked away from this after everything was said and done, and I was very satisfied with my time. I do feel like there were a lot of moments of difficulty and frustration and kind of bashing my head against the wall. I think there's at least like 2 people that can attest to my pain. But I still wanted to say that right now. All these words are coming from the fact that I really enjoyed this. And I also would like to say, I walked away with the gold prize. So I got the elephant ears or whatever they call them. So I'm someone who was very early in this. I was there since the moment the warehouse door opened. And I honestly, if I didn't have a pretty crappy moment, which I'll get into once I get there, I could have gotten plat. I am 100% confident in myself to say I could have had plat if it weren't for a specific moment in this event, but I'll get there when I get there. So, regardless, I just want to say up front, I enjoyed this event. All my complaints and criticisms are coming not out of pure frustration, even if there is frustration to them. This is coming out of just things that I think could have been better for future projects that this team decides to work on. So, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with just the main game and what was good about the main game, and then I'll get into the actual quests and the actual, like, acts from there, if that makes sense. So, we'll start with what just makes up the main game, we'll go from there. So, first off, I want to talk about positives with the main game. First thing I thought right off the bat was I really liked how the areas were all very cool. I mean, not to say that part 1s weren't cool, I really liked the part 1 areas, you know, like the other world was very unique compared to anything else, but I think this one just had, like, part 2 just had a lot more details behind their levels, and it felt like everything kind of had purpose. The only exception I might say is the bunker, but that even, like, that was so cool to see. It wasn't, like, terrible, but every area was really cool. I really liked the design behind every area, the amount of detail put into every area, so that was really fun. I especially loved the pier, which obviously was kind of like the main hub of part 2. All the NPCs were there, so that was really fun. I really liked that. Another thing is the obbies were very interesting on paper. I'll get into why they weren't perfect later, but on paper, the obbies were actually really cool. I like the fact that the obbies were, first off, not just, you know, brain dead easy. You did actually need a bit of skill to complete them, and if you had, like, the more skill you had, you could find faster ways of doing the obbies. A lot of the obbies had things where you were kind of just sitting and waiting for platforms to change, but if you had enough skill, you could actually find ways around that. There were multiple ways, like wooden platforms that would be there, or shortcuts that you could find, and these were how you got the 3 stars, is having to do these shortcuts. So I thought that was cool, that the game kind of incentivized you to actually get skill, and finding out that actually later on that'd be very important was pretty interesting. But overall, I did like the obbies on paper there's only one thing that I think completely ruined them, and we'll get to that pretty soon. Last thing I'm going to say for the positives is that the stuff you could collect was also really cool, and I would say a lot cooler than the Part 1 items. I mean, not to say that they weren't terrible. Part 1's items were just as fine, but like, these actually felt used and interesting to use. Like, Part 1 had like the dice, which is like, it was used once, and that was it. It was really lame. And like, the hat and the briefcase and all that stuff, that just felt really off-putting. I don't know. I was glad to see that these ones actually had more than one case of them being used, like the dynamite, the wrench, the hammer, all those things actually had like, and they even had like tiny little cinematics that you could use them for. I thought that was fun. So the items were like a little more engaging. The emotes were also really fun. I kind of wish that the game had a bit more of a social aspect to it, so I could actually like show off these emotes and have fun with them, but like, it was still fine as is. The emotes were still fun. I liked all of them. I liked using all of them. Now, getting into the downsides. The first one that I immediately came across is the controls for this game. I don't know what it was about them, but they felt extra janky. And I think this is where a lot of people's frustrations stem from. The obbies were made very frustrating because of this. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would clip against the edge of a platform and it would think I'm like hitting it directly and would just like do that little stun animation and send me to the void. So that happened so many times. So that was really frustrating. I don't know why that was even a mechanic to begin with, but it was very, very non-lenient when it came to like having to land those jumps without diving into them, because oh my gosh, those are frustrating. And the platforms are also really small, and when you have really janky controls, landing some of those could be equally frustrating. I still remember I chose Mountainside to be my first obby, which, first off, Mountainside should not have been the first obby you can find on that map. It really shouldn't have. It should have been like rooftops or something. I don't know why they chose Mountainside, but Mountainside is an awful first obby to play, especially if you haven't played the controls in months, because oh my gosh, it was bad. It was really bad. I can't tell you how long I spent on Mountainside just beating it, not even 3-starring it, just beating it when I first started playing Part 2, because it was just, the controls were awful, and Mountainside was made equally awful because of that. And then when you had a very tight timer of 1.5 minutes, it's like, oh, okay, that's great. And like some of the obbies, and this is what I also don't understand, some of the obbies got 15 seconds more time when they really didn't need it, and then others, like trenches, got 1:15 minutes, which was like really tight. Like you would be surprised how tight that timer is in some cases. So the timers were weird for 3-starring, and the controls were really janky, which made this is what made the obbies frustrating for a lot of people, including myself, was just, until you got like a really good hang of the controls and understood how the controls worked, it was very frustrating to beat the obbies, let alone 3-star them. But and like the other thing I will say, the Waves 1 can go screw itself. I hate that level so much. That level was also a genuine pain to finish. Oh my gosh. Anyways, another thing that I will say, and this is also something I found very early on to be kind of frustrating, the fact that every cosmetic in the game was locked behind Robux. I also thought that was really stupid, because not only does that kind of kill all your replay value, like instantly, just by not having something to grind for, but also it being only Robux meant that a lot of people missed out on the cosmetics. And they weren't they weren't exactly expensive, right? But they weren't exactly cheap either. Like some of them, yeah, they were like 50 Robux. They were something really small like that. But there were others that were like 200. And like, you gotta remember in this game, you don't get Robux for free, right? there's very little, if any, legitimate ways to get Robux for free in the current state of Roblox. So like, when the currency for Robux is not easy to get without actual money being put into the game, having what I would say to be one of your best ways of maintaining replayability is now locked behind Robux felt really stupid. Like, I could understand the UGC items being behind Robux, like obviously those should be behind Robux, but when all the cosmetics for the avatars, which mind you, your data, so spoiler alert, your data gets wiped when you complete Pig 64 Part 2, besides your cosmetics and like the key items in the game. Everything else gets wiped. So one of the only things that you keep, or that you could keep, on your avatar is locked behind Robux. That is just such a stupid thing to me. That is so brain dead stupid. At least in my opinion. I don't like that at all. And speaking of this as well, the other thing I was going to say is, like I already said it, the replay value is very little in this game. I mean, once you've beaten the final boss, there's literally no point in playing this game again. Like, the only reason I see someone coming back to this game after beating it is to either speedrun it or to just make a video on it again and be like, oh my gosh, what happened 5 years later? Is it still good? You know, that type of thing. But there's very little replay value that this game offers because the social aspect of this game is very little as well. I mean, obviously, like, you can play in public servers, but you can't see other players' names, you can't see who they are, so that makes it very frustrating. And furthermore, any attempt to find like something to grind for or something to keep you engaged is just gone. Like, it's not there. So I thought that was also kind of lame to do, to be honest with you. But I mean, maybe that wasn't their intention. Maybe they didn't want a replayable game. They just wanted like a standalone experience. And in that case, like, whatever. That is kind of what it felt like. It wasn't meant to be replayed. It was meant to just be like essentially a single player story mode game. But with all that said, there is just very little reason to come back to this game now. Once you've beaten it, you've beaten it. Like, surprise. Which sucks, because I do think that this game is very well done in that regard, that it could have had replay value and it could have been engaging to stay in after, but there isn't. And personally, after getting my data wiped, there's really no point in me replaying the game. Like, I have no interest in going back and getting all that back. Sorry, not sorry. Next is, so I'm going to start talking about the quests now. That's everything I have for the main game. I'm going to start talking about quests. And so I'm going to start with Acts 1 through 3, and then the collabs, and then 4 through 6, if that makes sense. So, first off is the Acts 1 through 3. This is what came out immediately, so everything up until the warehouse door. First off, I thought this was way more engaging than Part 1 already from the get-go. I played all of Part 1, and I will say that while Part 1 was cool and was interesting, I felt far more engaged in what Part 2 was offering from the get-go. The amount of detail and little clues to hint you in on what was going on without needing like 10 code deciphers to figure everything out, I think is really cool. So I really enjoyed that part because, like, something as simple as, and I wish I had the clips, but I don't have the clips for this. I still remember the first time I saw the green key in the dog's mouth, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. And then, like, you start finding these little other details, like when you read the name of the badge, it's like, feel the music, it's like, oh my gosh, this is it, like, this is what we have to do, I just gotta figure out how to do it, you know? And then as you start digging through other things, it's like, oh, I got a treasure map, well, that's interesting, and so you go figure that out, and then as it turns out, there's little things there, and all these little things. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that, like, every step felt like it was far more engaging. And to my next point, nothing felt unfair at this point. nothing from Acts 1 to 3 felt like they were genuinely unfair to the player. And I really liked that, because as I'll talk about later on, that sentiment changes quite a bit. But for now, this part felt like it was very well thought out, and everything had a purpose, and the amount of detail was very, very high at this point. Even once you get past the green key part and you get into the other room, it's like you have to, like, all the little details there too, like when everyone's just like, I plead the fifth, it's like, okay, well, how do I get around this? And like, you kind of dink around for a while, and then, you know, you start using other items, and then you're like, wait, you're a detective, he calls you a detective, so you use the magnifying glass, and suddenly everyone's talking, right? I thought that was really cool. And like when you get to the third part and it's trying to figure out all the animals and all that stuff, and you figure out really quickly that it's like you have to use their first letter and not the whole name, because obviously it wouldn't fit. Granted, I totally cheesed that. I think I still have the clip where I completed the entire third act with ease and not even realizing it. So, yeah. Point is, everything felt fair, like way more fair, and way more engaging at this point than anything up until this point did. Like, all of part 1, I don't think compares to this, to the acts 1 through 3. In my opinion, anyways. Like, obviously there's like a couple moments that were pretty cool in Act 1 through, or in part 1, but I think Acts 1 through 3 just kind of blow those out of proportion. Last thing I wanted to say as well is I enjoyed the fact that this felt more cinematic as well. Like, everything from getting unbanned to the, which I thought the getting unbanned part was also really cool. The fact that it wasn't just like a dumb opening cutscene type thing. The fact that it was actually like a quiz was really cool. But it also like wasn't unfair. Like, you could trial and error it, which I think is good. But stuff like that, stuff like the dance battle, stuff like the cutscene, all of those were really cool. I liked the amount of detail put into them, the amount of care put into them. They were all just really good. The only downside I really have for this specific portion is that the pacing was really weird. I mean, once you got past the dance battle, everything just kind of happened really quickly, right? Like, you spend a lot of time opening the map up, you spend a lot of time figuring out Act 1, and then after all that, Acts 2 and 3 both take place in a single room, which isn't bad. I'm not gonna say it's bad, but it definitely felt like it killed the pacing, because like Act 1 was really well paced, in my opinion. Having multiple steps, all of them being easy to understand, like, that made sense. But for whatever reason, the pacing suddenly just like speeds up tenfold, to where it's like, oh, you completed Act 1, well now Act 2 can be done all in one room, and actually speaking of, Act 3 can also be done all in one room. But then we're gonna kill all the pacing by making you do collabs. This might be a hot take, but my personal impression at this point is I don't know why they did collabs. I don't think they needed to. I'm not gonna say that I'm not grateful to, and I will get to that with the collabs portion next, but I think that this could have been better if they didn't do a collaboration event and instead focused more of their time on making more content for the game and better, like making the pacing better. Because the same problem occurs in Acts 4 through 6, and it's actually kind of worse over there. So Yeah, the pacing is very weird, where you go from like well-paced to two of the acts being done very, very quickly to grinding to a halt before you can complete the next three. So I didn't like that, but obviously I had no say in that, so whatever. But that's acts 1 through 3. I thought this was the best part of the event right here. Um, so now let's get into what, unfortunately, I would say is the worst part of the event, and that's the collabs. So, let me again start with the positives, because I do have two. First off, I think that the games that were chosen were really good. So if you didn't know, the three games were Flee the Facility, Tower Heroes, and Fighting. That was the last one. Oh my god, I just had like a total blank moment. I'm sorry. But yeah, so Tower Heroes, Flee the Facility, and Fighting were the three games. And I think all three of these games were really good. I really enjoyed my time with the initial parts of it, but like all three games, it could have been way worse games. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like when I heard that Royal High was potentially one of the games during the hunt to find him, I audibly groaned in VC. I was like, oh please no, oh please no. So I'm very, very glad it wasn't that. Because I'm sorry, but every Royal High event that, or like every event that's had Royal High in it has just bombed. So no offense. And then I heard that when it was a fighting game, everyone was thinking it was going to be like Blue Lock Rivals and stuff, and I was like, please, please no, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good if it's that game. So the three games that were chosen, I'm very glad it was those three games, because it could have made way worse decisions about what games it could have been Grow a Garden. I would have cried if it was Grow a Garden. So yeah, very glad that it was those three. And to further that, my next point, the amount of quality that went into these games from a design standpoint, I really liked as well. So first off, every single quest or every single game all led to a sub-place of some sort, right? Whether it be a boss fight, or the maze, or the special map for Tower Heroes, like, all three of those were really cool. They were very well designed, they had a lot of effort put into them, and I can tell they had a lot of effort put into them. So, I really liked that. I liked that all the quests weren't too long, but they were reasonable in length, where you had to do multiple steps to do them. Everything made sense. So I thought that was really fun too, the fact that like it didn't feel like it was just multiple fetch quests over and over and over again. So props to them for that. That's kind of unfortunately where my positives end, and my negatives are a lot worse, I would say. So my first big negative is the difficulty spike between the previous content, Acts 1 through 3, and this is exponential. Acts 1 through 3, I would say, weren't difficult. They took less than a day to figure out. And to anyone who like wasn't figuring out then and there, but just use a guide, I think they can also say this. It was pretty easy, right? Nothing required very intensive skill. Like, I would say the only thing that was like genuinely skillful at any point in time was the trial and error moments, like the dance battle or the getting unbanned part. Those were the only moments I felt like were very, not detrimental, but difficult. Right. Now, here's my problem. When you get to the collabs, oh my god. So this is coming pre-nerf, because like I said, I was pretty on top of everything. I got the gold, and I could have gotten the plat reward. I was pretty on top of everything during this event. Every single key, I was pretty much one of the first people to get it. Like, the beta key, I was one of the first 50 to get it. The alpha key, I was one of the first, I think it was 100 to get it or something like that. I could be wrong there, so don't quote me on that. But I was like one of the first 100 to get that one. And the Omega key, I was also like one of the first 100 to 200 to get that one. The Omega key I kind of slept on though, because I had family stuff going on at the time. So I was a little slow on that one, I will admit. But I was still always like within the top 200 to get those keys. So, very, like, on top of it, very quick to the punch. So, the reason I say that is because all three of these keys I did pre-nerf, before they got nerfed, which, to my knowledge, I think the only one that got nerfed pretty heavily was Flee the Facility. I don't know if Tower Heroes and Fighting did. I don't think they did. But, this is coming pre-nerf. Why were they so bloody difficult? Oh my god. So the other thing about this event that really irked me is the way that UGC was tied to them. And that was a big incentive for a lot of people. It wasn't the fact that you got skins, it was the fact that UGC was tied to the items. So you were incentivized to be one of the first people to get them. But they made the difficulty so ungodly hard in some aspects that many people just wanted to quit by the time they were done, and this will persist pretty much the rest of the event. This sentiment persisted, right? For Flee the Facility, you needed 3 different maps that you had no control over, right? You can't really control what maps are picked, even in private servers. So that was already problem number 1. You needed 3 different maps that you had no control of when they spawn, which meant that being one of the first was not at your own hands, but at the hands of RNGesus. Number 2, everything in Flee the Facility's quest was also client-sided, which means that nobody could help you in getting it. I learned this the hard way when my friend was also trying to do it, and I feel really bad for him. He was trying to do it alongside me, and straight up couldn't, because he didn't get the order I got, of course, because, like, obviously because client side, we had different numbers. He couldn't click the books because he was the monster or the beast, and for whatever reason, that didn't let him click the books. So he couldn't even do the first step when we finally got the library map. And we didn't learn until after I got the coin that he just straight up couldn't do it because he didn't have the code I had. Which kind of sucks. That really freaking sucks. So not only do you have no control of the maps being picked, but you had to do everything yourself. Everything had to be done yourself. And this is to say that you're not on a public server where, obviously, people on a public server, they're probably not gonna be, like, most of these people aren't playing Pig 64, let's be honest. I mean, right now, let me refresh real quick. Right now, Flee the Facility has 16,000 people. For reference, Pig 64 has 3.4 thousand. So that kind of says something, right? Even right now, the amount of people playing Pig 64, all combined, is less the amount of people playing Flee the Facility right now, right? In this very moment. I think the peak I ever saw Pig 64 reach was like 8K or something like that, 7 or 8K, which is still only half. So that means that if you're on a public server, worst case scenario, you have more than half the player base who just doesn't want to help you at all. And when you can only, like, when you need 3 people just to play around, and the maximum is 5, right? So that means if you don't have 2 other people, you can't join a pub. And also, mind you, private servers are 150 Robux, and I don't think they ever fixed that. So you kind of had to do this on a public server if you didn't have Robux behind a private server. And even if you had a private server, you needed 2 other people. So that's what made it awful. If you didn't have a private server, you had to hope that these people would maybe help you try and figure this out without bunking your head against the wall as the beast, right? That is awful gameplay. That is genuinely awful gameplay. And that is without even talking about the maze portion. I've already gone a half hour, my god, okay. The maze portion was, I'm not gonna say awful, but it certainly wasn't engaging or fun. This is where my frustration started, was this moment right here. Because this maze, when it came out, again, this is talking about when it came out, this is not talking about any of the nerfs. When this came out, this maze was grueling. And mind you, I only did this in, I think it was 4 attempts. Right? I only took about 4 attempts to do this. Many people took a lot more than 4 attempts to do this because of how brutal this was. So my initial understanding of the maze, what I initially thought was that it was 4 computers in a maze and 1 exit door. And you had 1 enemy in the area, and for every computer you did, another enemy would spawn, up to 5, and then you would escape, right? And you were under a 12-minute timer. And I thought, okay, cool. That's bearable. Like, that's a reasonable challenge. No. All of the enemies spawned immediately. All of them. And I don't know how many there were. I think it was 4 or 5, though. In a very tight maze where you could not dodge the enemies at all. And just touching them killed you. You had no defense but running. And if they were in the way, there was nothing you could do but wait for them to get out of the way. Permitting they don't go after you. That is awful. That is genuinely awful. It made the maze such a pain in the cheeks to do. I hated this part with my soul. And again, I only took 4 attempts. I can't even imagine anyone who had to take more than that, because I know a lot of people who took more than that. And I can't imagine the pain they had to go through to complete this damn maze. The other thing, mind you, if you failed at any point, from the very beginning to the very end, if you failed at any point, the game would boot you out, and you would have to completely redo the arcade portion of the quest. You luckily didn't have to redo everything, but you had to redo the final step of the quest in the arcade, which means that you had to get the arcade map again, and then hope to God that you can do everything in time, because that's the only way you could do it, which is awful. Genuinely awful. I hated that so much. And nothing saved either. I think now there are checkpoints, but nothing saved before this. When it first came out, if you failed, even if you had every computer done, if you failed, you were screwed. You had to redo everything. It was awful. It was very awful. Like, if you want to talk about artificial difficulty, come look at that. Oh my gosh. So after that grueling pain was Tower Heroes. Now, this is where my second complaint comes in a little bit. Okay, this is where my second complaint comes in. If you're a new player, if you've never played this game before, like me, I've only played this game once prior to this event, so I was level 2 coming into Tower Heroes, and I just gotta say, it was a pain. Being level 2 was kind of a pain, for one reason only. Okay, one reason only. If you're a high level, you have access to very, very strong characters, and So the first step required that you spawned in a special enemy, a pig enemy, that had 2,000 health and moved pretty quickly. And if you didn't kill it, you had to restart the entire first step, right? Now, if you're someone who's played this game, like, a lot, you're high level, then this isn't a problem to you, right? You already know exactly who to use, and you already know who can kill a 2,000 enemy very quickly, right? As a level 2 player, I did not have this luxury. I had to spend multiple rounds figuring out the optimal way to deal damage to this thing, just to kill it, and I only had the default characters to use. Because mind you, I was level 2. I didn't have anything else to try and do this with. Like, I had nothing at this point, which felt awful. Like, genuinely felt awful. So, already, new players were at a massive disadvantage. And to further that sentiment is the sub place, right? Once you get the floppy disk and get to the sub place, oh boy, if you don't know anything about tower defense games, you are cooked. There were multiple instances of just genuine jank when it came to this. I actually had more trouble with the Paco mini boss than I did with the final boss. The final boss, when I got to it, I killed it on my first attempt. Paco took me like 4 attempts because the way that he works is that he'll stun everybody in his vicinity multiple times. So, if you have a very strong build clumped in one spot, you will lose. Why? Why is the difficulty this high? Why? It felt genuinely frustrating. This was the only time in the entire event where I had to look up some help on how to do this part because of how genuinely frustrating it was. To the point that I had to look something up to figure out how people were doing this part. And even then, I still managed to hit top 100 because of it. Even then. Because it was that hard. People were taking so long to do it because it was that hard. It was genuinely frustrating. Especially because you got so far into the round just for all of it to be crushed by one enemy. Again, you want to talk about artificial difficulty. I think something like Paco was a very clear example of that. So, yeah, that was very frustrating, and it put new players at such a horrid disadvantage. Like, genuinely horrid disadvantage. Last was fighting. I thought this was the best one. Out of the 3 collab events, I think this was the best one by far, because it was much simpler. All of it took place in the lobby, which meant that you didn't have to go into a round to play this, which I was very grateful for. And all of these steps were very easy to understand. The only complaint I had about this one was that if you were on mobile, or even to some degree console, this one was going to be a lot harder for you. Console, not as much, but mobile especially. I heard a lot of complaints about mobile for fighting. So, and I mean, that makes sense. Fighting isn't really designed for mobile. It's designed for PC. So, to those people trying to play it on mobile, they were definitely having a rough time. But this one was still much better designed. I don't think anything about this screamed artificial difficulty. In fact, all of it was very easy once you figured it out. So, this one was definitely the easiest one. But overall, I still think this is the worst segment of the event. And I still stand by the sentiment that even though these were well designed, and this is out of just pure genuine opinion, this isn't out of disrespect, this isn't out of hate for these events, I don't think this event needed a collaboration thing. Not to say that they were bad, but there were genuine and I think fully valid moments of frustration from artificial unfair difficulty and being at a disadvantage by having to be new to a game or having to play on mobile. And I think that this event could have done better if more time was spent on the main game to improve the pacing rather than spending it on collaborations, which led to very unfair artificial difficulty. And I am still in the sentiment as well that the people who got the UGC at this point for getting the 3 keys first I bet a lot of them hacked their way to them. I'm gonna stand by that as well. I bet a lot of those went to people who hacked all 3 of the keys, or at least the last one. Some people I do think got it legitimately, but I bet not all of them did. And unfortunately, I probably have to say the same for the other UGC items, so kind of crappy, but whatever. Last is the acts 4 through 6. I think a lot of people are going to say that this is their worst segment here, and I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. There was a lot to be said about this, so let me start with the positives though. And this is where I think I'm gonna get in hot water a little bit, so bear with me. I don't think that from a design point, this was unfair. I really don't think so. A lot of people didn't like the obby segment. A lot of people didn't like the boss fight segment. A lot of people thought that this was unfair. I watched a YouTuber who was streaming and took hours to get out of the Rising Lava obby about halfway through because of how difficult it was. And even when it was nerfed, they were still having trouble, right? And so a lot of people kind of fell under the sentiment that it was unfair and very unfairly difficult. I am under the impression that this is not a matter of unfairness, but a matter of skill. And maybe this is just me sucking up to the devs. I don't know. I don't really care. But this was a genuine testament of skill, expression, and how well you knew the game. I'm going to say that. I am fully going to say that. If you had the proper skill, if you had learned the controls, if you had learned the items, you would probably say that this actually wasn't that bad. And I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that. And I fully back that up. I was initially also under the impression that this was very difficult. But once I started understanding certain things, it really wasn't that difficult, right? Like, when you get to the warehouse, right, when you first enter the warehouse, there's something that immediately clicks. You see a bunch of locks, colored locks, and you see that there's an enemy walking around. And the first thing that immediately triggered in my mind anyways was, oh, this is just a generic piggy level. If I just know to keep my distance from this thing, then I'll be good. And sure enough, I got through the warehouse as like one of the first 15 to get through it. Actually, probably one of the first 10 to get through it. So, like, it wasn't that bad once you understood that part. Right? And then you kept going and you got to the obby, right? A lot of people, this is their main frustration, is the obby. And I'm just gonna say it. If you learned the mechanics of this game, if you spent time mastering the obbies, right? If you went and 3-starred every obby, and you did it legitimately, that's the other thing. If you did it legitimately, I know a lot of people didn't do that legitimately. I know who you are. And I am calling you out right now. If you took the time to legitimately 3-star the obbies. Not finding help, not finding outside resources, not cheating your way through it with items. If you legitimately learn the skills needed to 3-star every single obby without help, I think you were in a better position. And I think that you were rewarded with this very difficult obby that had multiple ways of showing your skill expression, right? People who understood the mechanics of this game were going to be able to do this much faster. People who understood how to find shortcuts in obbies like this, which the other 5 obbies did have shortcuts. And if you learned to start looking for those rather than what's immediately presented to you, then when you got to the firewall obby, you would have been able to figure this out very quickly, like I did. I learned very quickly that there were multiple ways to get shortcuts through the obbies. Multiple. And if you saw those, you could skip entire segments of the obby using just the umbrella, or like maybe an item. Some you didn't even need items to do. Some you could legitimately just jump around because it was that easy. And like, yeah, some required the umbrella, but you could use the umbrella very easily, right? So I think that this was a true testament of skill. And another thing, and this is the other thing I wanted to say in terms of positives, every single point in this part, and for all of it, really, even in Acts 1 through 3, every single part was done with purpose, it was done with detail, and it was done in a way to test you, to truly test you. Were some parts a little frustrating? Absolutely. But I think every part was done to test you, right? In Acts 1 through 3, it tested your exploration skills, it tested your attention to details, it tested your trial and error abilities and how well you could figure things out on your own. It tested your problem-solving skills. All of those were tested. And 4 through 6 decided to take that a step further. It tested your piggy skills. It tested how well you've actually played the main game. It tested how well you were doing in obbies, and if you were truly ready, this was your test, right? If you took the time to learn this moveset, learn what the obbies were trying to tell you with these certain platforms and how they worked, with how to be on the lookout for shortcuts, how to use certain items, right? Then you were going to be fine, right? You may have slipped up a couple times, like I did. I slipped up multiple times. But you were going to make it, right? Even at the boss fight, and I haven't talked about the boss fight yet. The boss fight was very difficult as well, right? 3 phases, very easy to get hit, and the regeneration in this game is very slow, right? But if you were catching on, a lot of items in this game didn't really have a use right away, right? When I first started, it was very weird to me. I was like, why are there items giving me damage boosts and healing me and giving me immunity to things? What's going on there? Like previously, that wasn't a thing. Previously, it was just like jump boost or speed boost. Now you're giving me things to fight. But up until now, I haven't really fought anything. So why are you giving me these? When I got to Limbo and I saw that I was at the end, I knew immediately, like it clicked immediately, this is where those come in. And if you were paying attention to these items, which I bet a lot of people weren't, if you paid attention, you would have noticed this too. You probably would have noticed that up until now you haven't done anything in terms of fighting. And I think that's what made this special, is if you truly paid attention to the game, if you truly mastered the mechanics of the game, if you truly took the time to care and put in the effort, this game gave you. Yes, there were bugs, and I will get to those. But after the bugs was just skill. It was like, genuinely, it was just a skill thing at that point. Now, okay, let me get into the bad. There were many bugs, and I experienced a lot of them. Let me just go through all of them real quick. In the warehouse, I got spotted from halfway across the warehouse, hospital, whatever you want to call it. I got spotted halfway across there through walls. That happened to me. Boo-hoo, right? Whatever. The checkpoints stopped working for me, and so I had to figure out that in order to reset to this bug, I just had to kill myself twice, and then it would reset the checkpoint and I'd be fine. That was actually a thing, by the way. The elevator soft locked me, so I had to redo the whole obby twice. And this is where I say I kind of got robbed of the plat achievement. When I got to the elevator, I was in the top 10, and I'm being dead serious. When I got to the elevator, I was in the top 10 for getting that achievement before the elevator bugged on me. And then when I redid it and I got back, I was still in like the top 30 or 40. Right? Now, granted, at that point, I knew I probably wasn't going to get the plat. But when I first got there, I was in top 10. I could have gotten it. But I obviously didn't, and I'm like, whatever at that point. I then got to the boss fight, and I also got soft locked there. Multiple times, actually. I had to rejoin, I think it was twice. First a public server, and then I had to rejoin a private server again to finally get into the boss fight. So had I not gotten soft locked twice and had all those bugs, I could have gotten plat. I am fully under the impression that had I not had to get soft locked and reset, I could have walked away with a plat award. And yeah, that's a little upsetting, but at the end of the day, I really don't care. What I care more about is the fact that this just was... I think a lot of people got screwed over by the bugs, right? I bet I'm not the only person who was at the firewall achievement in the top 10 and then got screwed, right? I bet I was not the only person to deal with that, let alone the boss fight soft lock. So that was really frustrating. So that's where I will sympathize with people, right? If you are getting genuinely screwed over because of the bugs and the soft locks, which there are multiple, I fully sympathize with that because I felt them myself, right? And those were really bad. Those were awful. The other thing I'll say is in the obby area specifically, there were definitely moments where there was kind of a lack of direction on where to go. I felt that multiple times, and watching other people streaming, they had the same problems where they really didn't know what to do after certain points because the obbies definitely had some moments where there was just no direction on where to go, which was a little frustrating, but I definitely think that there could have been more testing on this part, and I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't more testing. But with that said, I also think that this was a genuine testament of skill, and this is why I say that this isn't the worst section. In the collaboration, there was just legitimately moments of artificial difficulty that were purposefully put into the game, right? Moments like not being able to control what maps are picked in Flee the Facility. Parts like the maze in Flee the Facility that was just genuinely difficult because you had to do all of it in one go. Things like the Tower Heroes subspace, where it was very difficult without a very specific setup to defeat Paco or the final boss. Stuff like that. Those are legitimate moments of artificial difficulty that were very unfair, right? But if you don't look at the bugs and the soft locks, nothing about Acts 4 through 6 of Pig 64 were artificially difficult, in my opinion. because if you took the time to really learn the moveset and understand the moveset, and if you understood what the items were there for when you got to those points in time, I think that that is where you had an advantage, right? So, and again, I fully sympathize with the people who had to deal with bugs and soft locks. I fully sympathize with people who probably struggle a lot more because of playing on mobile or console, right? I will say that, like, this event was definitely not friendly towards them at all. But I also saw a lot of people who were complaining because of just sheer difficulty, and to them, I have to say, kind of a skill issue. Like, this was truly a test of your skill. Especially once the bugs were getting patched, which took a little bit more time than it probably should have, but I also understand that the team was under immense pressure at the time and had a lot going on, so I don't fully blame them for that. But the bugs and soft locks definitely ruined, or at least soured, a lot of people's taste of this, but this is exactly why I wanted to calm down before making this video, is because I genuinely think that Acts 4 through 6 weren't as bad as people made them out to be, and the only reason they were that bad wasn't because of the difficulty, it was because of the bugs. I bet if I went back and played it now, I wouldn't say I could do it in my first try, but I would certainly say that I could do it much, much quicker, and I would also not have nearly as many problems. So that's just my personal take. Overall, I would give this game and this event, like, I would really say like a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. I think that it was really fun. Sure, there was certainly moments of frustration, certainly artificial difficulty, and certainly things that I think even just the base game could have done better, like not locking cosmetics behind Robux. But with everything that is said, I think that Pig 64 is one of the best things to really come out of the Piggy universe, I guess. I think it was one of the best things to come out of that. I think that it was really fun. I'm very grateful to have such a game to experience, and I really do hope the best for the team and whatever they go with moving forward. I would like to also say this: please don't give them hate at all for this event. I've seen multiple people giving them a lot of hate, and I'm sure they're just, people who are young and frustrated, but I saw people who were like legitimately telling them to never touch another game or never be devs again, or worse things that I won't say. And to those people, just stop. Please just stop. Be better. Please be better. I think this was really fun. I had a great time, even when I got frustrated, when everything was said and done, when I got the chance to really sit back and reflect. I had a great time. I really enjoyed this. I really hope the team also got to enjoy this, and I hope that their experiences moving forward are good. And even through all the frustration, I hope you guys got to enjoy it as well. So we don't get these events, let alone this level of quality of events, very often. So when we do, I'm very grateful to have these events and to be able to have this much fun in them. So again, overall, 7.5 out of 10. There were things that could have been done better. There probably could have been some better playtesting, but overall, I had a great time. So I really hope that you guys also had fun with this event. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all pretty soon, hopefully.